Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Constructive Conversations. The intention of this podcast is to explore the mindset and actionable approaches that empower entrepreneurs to achieve success in all areas of life. The reason I do this podcast is because 10 years ago, I knew I wanted to start a business, but I had no idea where to start, no role models to follow. So the goal is to provide that inspiration for new entrepreneurs and to provide the fuel for those who are already doing it. Joining us today, we have Simon Gibbs, a dynamic entrepreneur and business coach. Growing up by the Murray River in northern Victoria, that's Australia, Simon transformed early challenges into entrepreneurial success. He's built multiple thriving businesses globally and now dedicates his time to coaching others and sharing valuable insights from his own journey. Thanks so much for joining us today, Simon.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us today, Simon. And you're joining from the States today, you're not in Australia currently.
Correct. Yes, I'm in the US at the moment. Got some business ventures to work on here. Got some a business event, which is one of my coaches that I still work with. He's got an event coming up in a couple of weeks, so I'll tie in with that and then back to sunny Australia. So we'll basically just start to get into the US winter, and then I will jump straight back into the Australian summer. So it's going to be a rough first week back in Australia. Been in the US. By the time we get home, it'll be 2.5 months. So it'll be a bit of a shock.
Yeah, that's a good to get out of the cold though. So on that note, you're setting up your business. What does your company look like today? What is it that you do?
So there's a couple of things that I do. The main one that I've spent most of my life in is electrical and solar. So I'm still a qualified electrician in Australia. I've held on to my qualifications because, it's fun. I still enjoy it. I help, friends and family out, but that sort of went by the by a number of years ago. We built the business up and then got into dedicating into off-grid solar, which is solar panels and batteries where you can build a power system that will run anything from a small home to a large industrial business where you don't need connection to the mains power supply. So a full standalone power system for whatever application you can dream up. A lot of people are doing it for homes. And so we found that the majority of our market is into the higher end residential that are doing, they're setting up for retirement, or they've bought a remote area, love the property, but it's too difficult or too expensive to get power lines connected to the new house. So they build a full standalone system, and you can live as if you're connected to the grid with modern off-grid solar. And so half the business has been educating people. A lot of people still think of it from 20 years ago and don't realize what's possible. And then that's then expanding. We're getting a lot more interest than we first thought. We've hit a couple of times now. We've actually had to turn the ads off on our advertising on social media because we've had too many leads coming in to be able to service everybody. So we did get swamped. Some of the joys of early business, it's either flood or famine. And anyone in entrepreneurial pursuit will understand you go through a lot of famine, and then you find that little thing that just works, and all of a sudden you have a whole new raft of problems. I think when people initially start, they don't anticipate that having more clients will cause problems. They come, you start, you don't have enough clients. So you're trying to get people interested, and you don't realize that the minute you get that floodgate open, you have a whole new list of problems that you're not prepared for.
Absolutely,
so we definitely found that.
Yeah. It's a whole different problem set that you don't even anticipate, but that's part of the growth, right?
Absolutely. And so we're still doing that business. That's part of what I'm doing here in the US. We're expanding our operations into the US and then into Africa, because power reliability for people is obviously a huge thing. And the way we do our systems is a little different to the way most people do their systems. I won't go into it because I'll chew up too much time, but effectively, it makes it very easy to be able to just package up and deliver to anywhere you like in a pre-built system. So it saves a lot of the technical on-site work, which means it's deployable at anywhere in the world. You don't need a large skill set to be able to install this thing.
Awesome. That's really cool. And then what got you, to the point of starting this business? So you trained as an electrician. What happened between, being an electrician and now running this company and launching in multiple countries?
I think it was always a desire to do something that was going to impact the world. I like the idea that whatever I do is valuable to other people. And I think any business that is worth anything has to be valuable to other people. It's not just something that we like. It has to be something that other people see a value in. And that value needs to be much higher than the price we ask for it. that's how you get something that people are prepared to pay money for. And so I spent 10 years as an electrician and I struggled to make profit. I was busy and I grew up with the mindset that busy meant productive. And a decade in, I ran into massive financial troubles because I couldn't work any more hours. I was sleeping as little as possible and I was so busy, but I was not productive. And then I got into actually getting a coach, and that led to getting another coach and getting another coach. And I started training myself. So I trained as an electrician, took 4 years to do my apprenticeship. And I came to the realization that I had not trained as a businessman. And so I needed to start my apprenticeship as a businessman and I needed to go get training. And so I started to invest money into coaches to learn the art of business. I then fell in love with actually running business as opposed to being an electrician. I still enjoy being an electrician, but I find it far more fascinating running businesses. And I see it as a game. It's a fun game. It's a stressful game, but it will teach you to grow up. It will teach you about your character. It will make you become a better person, because all the limitations in your business are personal limitations that go through all of your decision making. So until you become a better person, you can't make better decisions. And so it's a great way to grow as a human being.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've heard that from other entrepreneurs is your personal growth and development is directly tied to the growth of the business. So yeah, it's a great vehicle for that. And I like your story because mine's similar. I trained as a carpenter and then and also I worked as a firefighter, and then sort of same thing. I started investing in myself and personal development and said, hey, you know what? I like running a business more than I like being there, swinging a hammer or a fire hose in some cases. Yeah, so similar journey. And talking about that start, did you have entrepreneurial parents? What was sort of what pushed you towards running your own business initially?
It's interesting because my parents are not entrepreneurial at all. So my father is actually a builder, a carpenter, trained as a cabinet maker, became a home builder and did most of his work doing residential building. He was the one that actually encouraged me to get into electrical instead of building at the end of my high school, because he asked me, what are you going to do for a job once you leave school? And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll be a builder like you. He was like, no, don't do that. Yeah, my back hurts, my feet hurt. Like it's a terrible trade. You're smart and you have an interest in electrical things. Why don't you become an electrician? I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll look into that. So that was the path I ended up taking. And then I think the thing that really drove me, I did my apprenticeship primarily in commercial electrical, so big multi-story government contract type work in Canberra in Australia, in the capital of Australia. And in that, I saw what was possible because I was hands-on in it, but I also saw how poorly things were managed, run, to the point that I said, I have to get out of this. The minute I get my qualification, I need to leave this industry because I'm not prepared to put my license and my name to any of the work that's going on here because it is so substandard. Now we have so many rules and regulations, but that's only if you're being honest to them. And so if you can skirt the rules and cut corners and not tell people and don't worry about this and let's just not tell anyone about that. And I'm thinking, if this goes bad, we're talking about electricity that can kill people and we're cutting corners. I'm not prepared to be a part of that. And so I guess it was my internal convictions of what I was and was not prepared to do for people, knowing there is an end user involved. And so I've always wanted to do the best by people. I just realized I couldn't do it through being an employee in that environment anyway. And so it was like, well, I've got my ticket. And literally 2 weeks after I got my qualification, I rang the company and quit. And I started my business. Now, I don't suggest to others that you do it in the fashion that I did it. I literally started my business with $50 in my bank account. I did not have a nest egg. I had no plan. I had no training. And that bad launch took me 10 years to rectify. And so if anybody is listening to this, considering starting a business, I would say get some advice. There's plenty of free advice, or you can talk to somebody for very little money who might be a semi-successful business person. Look at somebody who's got a run rate. Their business is doing over $1 million a year. Someone who's got 5 to 10 employees. If you offered them $200 to sit down with them for an hour and extract 20 questions out of them, it would be the best money you could ever spend. And get some advice on what you're thinking, what you're trying to launch, and their thoughts. that will probably save you tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, in mistakes. That is where I would suggest people start. And then really, the other thing is to make the decision as to whether you're trying to run a business or whether you're in love with your product. So many people start a business because they love the product, they like the idea, and then they discover they have no idea how to actually run a business. When you learn the art of business, the product becomes irrelevant other than it being a good product and a great fit for the client. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, because a business is a business and it runs on the same principles no matter where you are. It runs on value, providing value to a client, knowing how to find clients, your lead generation, advertising, your offers, all that base stuff. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, they all require those same skill sets. So if you train that, you become useful across the board, irrelevant of industry. And then picking the industry and picking the product just becomes a case of research and making sure it's something that has a good stable background, it has a good future trajectory, and it's something that you think is going to be viable long term. And there's enough of a market that you can actually make an expanding business and something that's going to maintain the income that you want. I would probably steer away from doing market stalls selling scented candles, because it's probably not going to scale. But then if you jump into vehicle manufacturing, it's always going to be there, but the overheads to start are so huge, you probably can't get in. So you've got to work with what you've got, but understand those sort of concepts when you're looking at a business, and certainly get advice and get training, 100%.
That's absolutely great advice, to sit down with someone, and even for an hour, if you want to start up, and get that advice. And I love what you said. Are you running a business, or are you in love with your product? Yeah, definitely. And I think, even people like on the artistic side who have something they fall in love with, and but yeah, you really have to look at it as a business. And once you can have that mindset, that applies anywhere. So that's great. You mentioned in the intro that, so after 10 years, what really made a shift for you is when you started getting mentorship and getting coaches. So who were your mentors, or who are they now?
So at the moment, anyone in Australia who's sort of been in that personal development, business development space would probably be aware of a man by the name of Kerwin Ray, who actually tragically died about a fortnight ago. So he had struggled and suffered with severe strokes throughout his life from his early 20s, and had done some remarkable recoveries from that. Just an amazing example of what you can do post major injury to come back. And the last stroke he had a couple of years ago, I think it took him out for about 9 months, and he was able to come back from that. Like, he had to learn to speak again, he had to learn to function again, and he was back on stage and back on running his events, and just remarkable to see what was possible. Now, I don't know the actual cause of his death this time. I assume it's related, just because he had a history of that, but I don't know. So he was certainly one of my first big ones, and then I stayed working with that community. I'm still part of that community. And then the other couple that I'm working with at the moment is JT Fox in the US. He's a Canadian, but primarily operating out of the US, I believe now. He operates all over the world. He's got a lot of zeros behind his name. He's done very well for himself. And I've got an interesting, way that I look at coaches, in the fact that what they teach is only half of the value you get from them. The other half is watching what they do. And so watching how he's able to network with people, how he's able to put events together, the way that he can leverage these things in his life to create these things of value, isn't taught, but it's seen. And so I've got just as much out of the actual content that he's created as to what I have out of just seeing how he operates. And so I still work with JT. I'm part of a few of his networks. And then I'm also working with Dan Martell. And with Dan stuff, and it's interesting, and you'll start to find this as you get more coaches involved in your life. Although they are all quote unquote business coaches, they have very specific things that they coach on. And so Dan became a great value to me because he is far more of a systems man. So he's more about how you create the systems and structure inside of a business to make it operate. And so that then highlighted another nuance inside the business that I needed to put some focused attention to. And it's interesting, I look at all of this coaching that I've done over the years now, the ones that I'm still part of, And I've got a good friend of mine back in Australia. He's running a electrical and solar business. We're looking to do some partnering work with some of our fabrication with them. And he's doing, I think they're somewhere in the order of 5 to 10 million turnover a year. And I was talking to him about running ads because he was talking about leads starting to get a bit tight. This is a number of months ago. I said, well, what's your lead acquisition channel and what are you doing and what's your social media? And he's like, oh, don't really do anything on social media. And I don't think, ads just scare me, especially stuff online. And I said, so what are you doing? He's like, oh, we've got a sales guy and he sort of just goes around and, talks to people and finds leads. And I kind of leave that to him. And I said, you should at least start running some ads on social media. I said, even if it's just $40 a day. And his answer that this is a guy doing plus 5 million a year. He's like, wow, $40 a day, that's a lot of money to put into something. I don't know if I could bring myself to do it. And I thought, wow, you've got somebody who is fairly successful in what they're doing. It works. Yet there's this element of their business that I see this big potential in that he couldn't see. And we have different experiences. So I have experience in that where he doesn't. I can see the value, he can't. And that is part of where the coaching came from, to go, I can actually see a lot of things because of my experience in my 15 years in business so far that other people may not have experience or can't see. You don't know what you don't know. And so if I can create a way that I can teach that, then it's going to allow other people who have struggled the same struggles that I went through, who are stuck where I was stuck. Rather than it taking the 15 years it took me, we could do it in 12 months. And so if I did nothing else but to get everybody who came into my world who wants to run a business to be able to get to where I am now in a quarter of the time, the value add to their overall life is exponentially huge. And so I don't need to be able to go, I'll build you a $100 million a year business. Because if you talk to just about any business coach, they'll tell you the hardest money to earn is your first 100,000. So your first 100,000 revenue per year is the hardest money you will ever make, because you have to do all of your foundational learning to get to that point. The second hardest is your first million in turnover, because at that point, you've probably got employees now, you've got the next level of headaches that you've never encountered before, and they are all required before you can get there. So you're going to just brick wall after brick wall after brick wall as you are exposed to new challenges. This is where coaching then accelerates your learning, because rather than having to figure out what the wall is, then figure out a strategy to try and beat it, then test your strategies and finally find the one that works, you can talk to a coach who goes, yep, do this and this, and that will probably get you 90% of the way there. And you can do that and make that change in hours instead of months or years.
Yeah, and that saves you. Yeah, that saves you that time, and like you mentioned, the coach identifies the blind spot, which otherwise you're completely ignorant to. So that ties back to what you said about you want to have an impact in the world with your business, and you can imagine you help 10 or 20 business owners with a small change like that, and then the ripple effect, right, goes to their employees and their families and the community. So yeah, that's super valuable. And so speaking about overcoming those obstacles in the business, what's one of the biggest obstacles you've overcome in your business, or that one of the hurdles you had to overcome?
I think there's probably two that stick out. The first one was realizing that I didn't know as much as I thought, and I wasn't as good as I thought. So the first part was the being humble enough to actually go get a coach and realize I needed help. The second one was understanding my biggest flaw and my biggest thing I didn't see at the time was sales, marketing, and lead gen. And so I had relied on being a really good electrician. Most of our work was referral based. We just had people call up. We were busy enough and things just kind of ticked along. And it wasn't until I started playing the game of business that I looked at how do you scale that and went, oh, this is not a good vehicle to scale. Okay, I need to be able to go find unknown people and get them to buy my stuff. Cool, that seems easy enough. And I realized that the way I interacted with people who came as a referral, because a referral is a hot lead. They are coming from somebody who has had you do work for them. They say, this guy's amazing. You should definitely get them. They'll look after you. They're great. That person comes to you because they trust the friend. So they infer that trust to you and go, absolutely, you're a trusted person. Come on into my house, do whatever work it is. Bob said you're great, so that's good enough for me. Then when you reach out to a cold lead, like someone you don't know, you are going to say to them, you should trust me to come and do your work and give me money for that. And then this person says, well, why should I trust you? You're probably a scam like everybody else. And so now you're dealing with really skeptical people, not really warm people. That takes an entire different skill set to deal with. And so I walked into that brick wall thinking I was just going to chit-chat my way to sales with these cold audiences, and then realized I had a ton of work to do, which I thought I could fix in a month or two. It took over a year to build sales process, build a sales team, get someone to lead the sales, train myself in sales, understand how to do lead generation, which meant creating advertising. So I had to learn platforms. I had to learn Google. I had to learn Facebook. I had to, become somewhat of a social media expert to be able to make all of this work to the point that I had enough traction to say, hey, this does actually work. Then I had to bring people into that process to replace me because I was now time poor because I had so much to do. That entire process has so many layers and processes involved in it. It's not just, I'll jump on that ad on Facebook that says hire a social media manager and all my problems will go away. And I learned that the hard way because I did exactly that. I jumped on, I hired somebody for $20,000 to get me a guaranteed 200 leads. My problem was I didn't know that you needed to specify warm lead, qualified lead, how you were going to qualify them. I just thought leads mean people that want to buy your stuff. No, leads mean somebody that clicked on an ad. So they could have built me an ad that had a picture of a car at the front and people thought they were buying windscreens for vehicles. They would have counted that as leads because they clicked on the link and it came up on the metric. So what happened is I got 200 leads. They were all useless and I didn't get a single sale out of 20 grand worth of cost to this agency. And then I figured out in that process, I didn't know what I'd ordered. I didn't understand enough to actually have made an informed decision, and I blew 20 grand. So this was some advice that was given to me by a coach. You need to be proficient enough in the skill that you are hiring somebody into so that you can understand what a good decision and a bad decision is. So if you don't know sales, you have to go and do the legwork and start doing sales yourself to learn it at least to a point to understand the process. I tried to get people into the business early. I got lucky with one who was my VA. She was really good, was with us for a while, did a ton of really good work, and it was the first VA hire I'd ever done, and it just turned out to be great. When she left, tried to get a replacement. The replacement wasn't as good, and then I realized that I had just got lucky. It wasn't actually that I knew how to recruit or hire. And so here's a whole nother issue. You've got to learn how to be a recruitment agent. You have to, there's so many skills you need to learn, and it's not until you jump in boots and all into the process that you figure out what you don't know.
Yeah, and then at that point you start to build the machine. So you described, I was picturing it, you built the machine that generates the leads with all the aspects, the sales team, the advertising, the funnels, the processes for that. And then you built the sort of the hiring machine once you figure that out. But yeah, that is really good advice about gain proficiency in the skill that you need to hire for. The last guest I had on was a tech founder, and he said he had to learn how to code so that he can communicate with his developers. And when hiring developers, are they blowing smoke, or do they actually know what they're talking about? So that's absolutely great advice. And the flip side to that question, what's one of the greatest successes and maybe an unexpected win that's come out of running your company?
I think one of the greatest wins that I've had is the people closest to me, around me, have seen and mentioned and commented to how much I have grown through this process, that I am a better husband, better father. I'm a better human being. I communicate better. I've just become a better person because I had to, not because I saw all of those other flaws in my life in general. I just saw the business, but the business required me to become a better person to be able to function. And the trade-off was I just became a better human being in the process. So that's probably the biggest tangible thing. Yeah, outside of the fact that the business has grown, it's given me the opportunity. Like 5 years ago, if someone had have said, book yourself and your family a flight over to the US and stay there for 2.5 months and enjoy yourself and, do this, do that, and spend all this money, I would have gone, there is no way that is ever in my foreseeable future, that I don't have that kind of money. And then here we are sitting in the US and we're, enjoying ourselves. Yes, we're doing a lot of business stuff and all the rest, but the family's here. We're seeing things we've never seen. We're giving the kids experiences they couldn't have had otherwise. And so it's been a wonderful time. Business has given me the opportunity to do that. So I would say the quality of the improvement in my life quality and my personal character are the two biggest. I guess the increase in lifestyle was part of what I'd hoped business would provide. It's nice when it starts to happen. But that increase in my personal character and having other people notice, not just thinking that I'm better, but other people commenting just randomly on, they haven't seen me for 6 months. Oh, wow. So I didn't realize I'd changed that much. Other people notice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. You get that feedback externally. Yeah. So it's not just your own opinion, but you're actually getting tangible feedback that, you're developing, growing. And that's really interesting. As you say, it's not a conscious effort, but it's just required. You have to be, your home life has to be better so that, your business can perform. So it's almost like a side benefit of working to grow in the business is everything else improves. That's really great. So here's one, and this is something Dan Martell, because that's how we met each other, is our mutual coaching with Dan Martell. And he's really big on personal branding. What are your thoughts on personal branding? Is that something you're doing actively?
So that was the other half of why I kicked off the coaching, because no matter what I do in my life, I will always have this experience of what I've done in business and the ability to pass that on to other people. Now, I may not always be a business coach as my face and brand, but I personally see business coaching that anyone does from an experience point of view, not just because they build a machine that can do it. Like if you were just building retreats to help business owners run retreats, you can probably run that as a business completely separate to yourself. But if you're the one giving the advice, you're the one doing any form of upfront teaching where you're the face, that really is your personal brand, because it's linked to who you are. If you went away, the majority of the business goes away. So I don't see the business of the coaching really being what I'm trying to build an empire out of. It is my way to give back to people, and it ties very much to me as my personal brand, who I am and how I kind of go about the world trying to help people. The solar business could very much be a business that is grown to a point and then sold to investors, partially sold, all of those full exit, partial exit type strategies on the business front, mergers, acquisitions, buyouts. We may roll up other companies into what we're doing. I may become a minority partner. Who knows? Like, there's all these things that can happen, and it doesn't really change how people perceive me. That's just the business that operates separate. I'm just the brains behind it at the moment. And so understanding that separation between business and personal brand, the personal brand, as I understand it, is once you start to put yourself out publicly, what do people perceive you to be? And if you change industry, if you move to another country, whatever it is that you do, look at how that persona of who you are is just as transferable, no matter what industry, wherever you are, whatever you're doing in life, you are still that person, you're still that brand. And the way I see it is, if you do something really wonderful that people, notice and give you recognition for, that's your personal brand. If they attach your name, so branding is the association between one thing and another. So the name is the brand. My name is my brand. And so when people associate good things with that, that is a good personal brand. If you do something stupid and you do it publicly and you get known for it, for instance, if you are, caught drink driving and you beat somebody up and you go to prison for it and it's all over the news, you're that guy. Most people remember Mike Tyson for biting off Holyfield's ear. It was one moment in his life, but it pretty well defined him from that point forward, because it was public, and that gave him a reputation that affected his personal brand. Now, was it a positive, negative effect? That's irrelevant, but You get the idea that what you do publicly, once you put yourself out publicly, is your personal brand. I see that if I tie that to business coaching, where my entire aim is to help other people, that sets up the perception in the broader public as to who I am. And so that helps to build a positive personal brand. And I've lost your mic again.
Yeah, so that's also really good advice. So your personal brand comes with you regardless of what happens with the business. And then you want to, actively be aware of what the perception is becoming when you put yourself out there, and be conscious of what you put out there. I remember on the fire department being told, if you do anything stupid, drinking and driving, and you get in a fight at the bar, the headline on the newspaper is going to see local firefighter did this. And so, they pay attention to how it would reflect on that organization. But when it's your personal brand, it's even more important, because you're the entire personal brand. That's a good analogy, the Mike Tyson analogy. So then, in terms of building that, what does that look like on social media? Sort of, can you talk about strategies that you're using there, to develop the personal brand? I mean, obviously including podcasts, because you're here talking as Simon Gibbs. But what else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think social media and putting thought into your social media presence is critical. That is your public persona. So I don't care if you have a private social media page that's like, well, this is just all the dumb stuff that I post so my friends can see. And then I have a business page over here, because I started that way too. And then very quickly realized I needed to go back through and delete out a ton of my old dumb stuff when I was much younger that was on Facebook, that was public record. Because if somebody wanted to, and any astute investor or business partner or anyone that wants to get involved with you is going to do their background on you. And the first place they're going to go is social media. And if I was doing it, the first thing I'm going to do is just sit there for 10 minutes and scroll to the bottom and see where you started. And so if there is you out drunk at parties with people doing dumb stuff, that's now ties back into this whole idea that you only get one chance at a first impression. So if somebody's looking for the dirt on you because they want to see if you're the scumbag underneath, because deep down everybody is, so we want to see how bad you really are. So they scroll straight to the bottom of your social media. They pull up all the dumb stuff that you did. They're like, wow, that's who I'm dealing with. What are you going to do? Argue with them? Oh, no, but I'm a different person now, which you probably are. But on social media, that's who you are. So I would be very cautious. If you've got old content on there, spend a day and delete out the old stuff. Allow it to go back 2 years. I would take out anything that is not presenting you in the best light. Actually, in my business community, I just put up a post of, if you consider how you present to the world, if you were going to be sitting down with a president or a king or a queen for a dinner, you were given, this is going to happen next week. What level of dress, how would you dress? What would your level of conduct be? How would you speak? How would you present yourself? Now, my question to you is, why don't you do that every day of your life? And most of that is because you don't have a high enough self-worth image. And so you project what you think other people think of you, and you want to kind of mirror that. So you think people don't think highly of you. So you're going to dress down, you're going to act down, you're going to be down at a much lower level, because you think that's how people are going to perceive you, and you want to be sort of appear on their level. If you run a business, you're an expert, you're a professional. So you should be a few rungs ahead of whoever it is that you're talking to and dealing with. So the extreme of that, which I don't suggest, is hiring exotic cars, hiring a flash suit and doing a photo shoot day to be somebody that you're not. Work on your internal so that when you get up in the morning, you find your nicest shirt and your best pants, and you get dressed to present yourself to the kitchen before you go out to the world. If you get up in your pajamas and you wander around the house like that and just don't care, that will rub off on everything else you touch. And so I think being able to understand why we behave the way we behave, I'm fascinated by personal psychology, the way people do and why people do what they do. Most of it, we all live in the same world. Everything external to us really is the same for everybody. But how I perceive it and how you perceive it are completely different. That's our lens. That's the filter that we put on the world. And then we project that, thinking everybody else either sees it the way we see it or should see it the way we see it, without realizing everybody sees it different. And so you've got to work with those limitations. And with your social media, people are looking at you. If they're new content, if you're doing business, you're trying to build your personal brand, you want people to see you as a professional, as an expert, as someone that they would listen to. And so if that's the case, take off things that are like, oh, look at the omelet I had for breakfast this morning. Or, hey, look, here I am digging dirt out of my toenails. Or just dumb stuff that is not, when people look at it, are they going to go, wow, this is somebody I want to look up to and respect. I want to be like this person. And that does mean editing your life on social media. Be careful about putting up, people want to be, I'm just being real. Yeah, at a point you can be. You can be real and show the negative. The advice I was given, once you're making $1 million a year into your bank account, or once you are turning over 5 to 10 million in your business per year, you can, and you've got a big audience, you can start to show a bit more real home life. Prior to that, keep it all off social media. And I had this the other day, I had a bad day at home and I was not feeling up to it. I was another video call. I didn't want to get on the call. I was just not feeling up to it because some stuff had happened at home. I hadn't slept well, all the other excuses you want to throw at it. And then I just went, no, I have a job to do here. Take 5 deep breaths, went outside for a walk, calm down, sort yourself out, go in, get dressed, get ready, go do the thing you have to do. The world at large doesn't care about your feelings. You need to find some safe places where you can do that internal work, where you can be safe to share things and all the rest. Social media is not the place to therapy. And so I am not going to put on social media the hour prior where everything was going to pieces. What I will put on social media was the video interview, because I presented well, I spoke well, I communicated well, it looks good. That's the sort of person people want to look up to. Now, everybody knows people have bad days. It doesn't need to be broadcast. So just be very careful when you're building your personal brand as to what you put online. And you do need to curtail it. You do need to edit it so that you are effectively the highlights reel, because that's what people want to see. You're not their best friend. Your best friend should see you in every aspect. That close circle of 5, they should know what your dark days look like. The rest of the world doesn't need that.
Yeah, I agree there. Don't spread that negativity out into the world. That's not producing value for other people. Yeah, so handle it and then like share after you've handled it. Yeah, this is the result I was able to produce. Yeah, so there's a bunch of points there that are great advice for social media strategy. So let's talk about the future. Looking forward, next 5 years, what are you excited about and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm looking forward to and planning for. My aim in 5 years from now is that we are a lot more established in Australia. Well before the 5-year mark, that business will be fully autonomous without me, that I will simply be there because I can be, not because I have to be. The business in the US, this is on the solar front, the off-grid solar, I plan to be, probably at about a 10 million a year to 50 million a year run rate in the US in 5 years from now. And then we will be well and truly established into Africa and probably into Europe at that point. So that's on the solar front. On the coaching front, I expect that's going to look more like a more well-oiled version of what I'm doing now with bigger, fancier things in there. So for example, we are currently set up to do a once-a-year mastermind. So the program I run is either a 6-week or a 12-month program. The reason for that is not everybody can afford to do 12 months. Some people just need some help right now. So we do a really intensive 6-week to really sort of kickstart people. And then if you want to do the 12 months, you can either start straight into that or you can then transfer and transition into it. At the moment, that 12-month program has an annual mastermind that we do, and it is a virtual. My plan is in 5 years, that will be a physical location, and we'll probably do multiples around the world where we will take people more local to their area so it's not cost prohibitive for people to attend, and do things where we can just massively increase the value we can give to people. My aim is not to make it in such a way that it costs you so much to be involved that it's like, this could be great, but it just sucked 50% of my profit out of my business. And I'm way back down here still, and I'm trying to grow. It's how can we create the most value with as little cost as possible. Now, I'm not saying there's no cost, and this is a very critical part for anybody who's looking at coaching. If it's free, the likelihood and the statistics tell us very few people actually put in 100% effort. If it costs you a lot of money to do something, and specifically with coaching, so to give you an idea, the first coaching I got involved with was $60,000 Australian per year. I didn't have 60 grand. I got into that program, and because it costs so much, I saw that it could be valuable. I took a gamble. Because it costs so much, I did everything I could to extract every piece of information out of that. Because of that, I got a ton of value out of it. If it had have been come along for free and just tag along, I wouldn't have been committed to it. I wouldn't have tried real hard, because what's it really matter? It didn't cost me anything. I just sort of, I couldn't be bothered today.
It's low stakes that way. Yeah, you're not personally involved and committed.
So until it costs you something, you're unlikely to commit to it. And so if you want to actually help people, and it sounds counterintuitive, and I know people who are skeptical, always going to jump to the thing, well, that's what you say because you're running the program and you just want people's money. No, statistics say if we give it away for free, all the people who say, I can't afford it and I want it for free, never show up. And the ones who do show up don't stick around. And very few people, and it's under 10% of people actually get value out of what they're doing. Most people will perceive it as a waste of time because they're not committed to it. If that same person had to put $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 down to do the same thing, they would get so much value out of it because they became invested into it. Dan Martell talks on this. His quote from the other day was that transformation happens at the transaction. It's not until it costs you something that you actually start to derive value out of it, because if it's worthless, hasn't cost you anything, you perceive it as worthless.
Yeah, and that's fascinating, because like you said, it can be the same service, but then the person who pays more for it actually gets more value and it's real tangible value, and they produce it because their perception is that the value is there. That's why I paid for it. And so basically they create that value. And I love that quote. The transformation happens at the transaction. That's awesome. But I like your goals. I like that you have the big goals moving forward. So I'll be excited to watch that progress as you go. Next question: do you have a book in you? What would it be about if you wrote a book?
I'm halfway through it.
Awesome. That's great.
So I have the title. I've written a rough draft. I have the concept, and it follows a business and life belief that I have, that I developed, which is failure is positive. And if we can understand that there is no such thing as negative, there is just learning experiences, that allows us to be able to alter the way we see challenges. Challenges are not setbacks, they're learning opportunities, they're training grounds. And so the idea, without giving the title of the book away, is if you had to fail a set number of times, so let's say in business, you are going to have to attempt something and it has to fail and not work for you, and you have to go through that 500 times. But after your 500th time, you get success, whatever success is to you. And that was a known metric. Everybody has to go through this process. What would your approach be to failure at that point? Would it be to shy away from it, or would it be to try and get as many done as quick as possible?
Yeah, you just keep hammering at it, right? Just get them done.
So the only difference between that concept and real life is we just don't know our number. But the concept stands true. So you have to go through failures to get to success. So why are we scared of it? If it's a known part of the process, why are we hanging back from trying? Because we have this perception attached to failure as negative. People see me as a failure. No, if you do enough of them, you have so much depth of character, depth of knowledge, depth of things that you could start a coaching program to help other people overcome, because you have failed so many times. And failure doesn't mean you destroyed the business. Failure means I ran an ad on Facebook and I got 2 clicks. I spent $1,000, and at $500 a click, it's not viable for my business. Then I learned X, Y, Z, and I got it down to $10. Well, that first part is a failure. You failed at running a good ad that was profitable, because that's what ads need to be. But you learned. That's a win. It's not a failure. You learned something, so now you're better. And so every failure you go through is just the opportunity to learn how to overcome it. And if you stack enough of those, you not only become a better person, you become valuable to other people because you have skills and experience you can share with others.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'll be excited. Is there a date when that book's coming out?
I haven't got a date yet because I need to dedicate some more time to actually writing it well. And I took this from Alex Hormozi's work on his books, and the amount of effort that he put in and the amount of time he put in to create something was of such high value. I am hesitant to release the book too early because I don't want it to be a half-baked effort. I want it to be something that is really valuable for people. So as much as it is at the moment will be written as a non-fiction, it will be written as a fiction book, but it will then have a tangible last chapter that is teaching several lessons. The other one that I'm passionate about teaching is how to learn. It's a skill set that most people don't push on, and it's so valuable. It's how to take something such as a fictitious story, understand the concept that's being taught, separate the concept from the story, take the structure of the concept, apply it into your own life or your own business, and rebuild your business over the concept and see how it stacks up and see where the holes are and make suitable adjustments. And if you can do that and learn that skill, you can listen to people teach in an industry that has nothing to do with yours and extract a huge amount of value out of it because there are concepts that apply across the board. But if you don't have that skill, you'll go, well, I'm not in a software business. Like my solar business is like a one-time sale business. I learned so much because of that strategy of Alex Hormozi's teaching around how to run recurring revenue businesses. Our two businesses are like polar opposites. And you could very easily say there is nothing that he teaches that's relevant to this industry. We are the complete opposite. There are so many things that he taught in that business model that I could transfer. And so once you understand principles, you can apply them across the board. If you only learn the skill that is attached to the outcome or the action, and that's all you ever learn, then you need all of those conditions to exist before you can do anything with that. So you need to learn how to learn concepts.
Yeah, that's super valuable. Yeah, that would. Well, whenever that comes out, I will be ordering a copy for sure. Because even in just what you're talking about, there's light bulbs going off. That you can transfer if you know the high level principle of how to learn, then you can transfer that knowledge from anyone. Yeah. Next one. So you talk about beliefs. Like it's clear that you spend a lot of time like working on your self-psychology, your beliefs. And do you have any like practices, like spiritual, religious or not, that and to what extent do those influence your business journey?
A lot. So yes. And the easiest way to explain it, because I come from a Christian background, my parents were pastors of a church, grew up in that environment. I actually got to a point where I was starting to question everything. And this is in my 30s. But I was questioning like life in general. I was questioning governments and policies and world events and just questioning everything. I was in a very negative place for a while. But I started looking at the religion as well and discovered many issues with organized religion. So anything that comes under that kind of a structure, they had inherent problems. And I was okay to overlook a lot of that. I came to a point in my life where I had to make a decision as to whether I was going to stay tied to the religious system or tied to the Bible that I believed in. And I saw that there was too many inconsistencies where it became you had to pick one or the other. And so I've always felt a direct tie to what I understand to be the truth, irrespective of whether that makes me popular or unpopular. And so I made the decision that, no, I do believe the Bible. And so because of that, and I've got a lot of personal belief around why I believe that, and I've tested and tried this just like I did everything else, and pretty much everything else failed those tests, that I came to the point of going, no, if there is a God, if there is a Bible, if this is the thing, then this other stuff can't then be true. And so one was, and it is internal, and I'm not going to say anybody else needs to believe the way I believe. This was my conclusion once I tested everything, and it took years testing this. That then led me to a point of going, there are now some hard boundaries that I have that I won't sacrifice on, even for business. And so where people are saying, well, you should do this on this day, or you need to go and do this, there are certain days that I don't do business on. There are events throughout the year which is like, nope, they are set apart things that I need to go and do over here. That is going to be separate from business. And so I had to figure out how I then ran a business while having these internal convictions. And so what that led to was, okay, I can live with a lack mentality, which is, oh man, I've got all these extra times off that other people could be working and making money, but I don't think that's an appropriate thing because of my belief. What do I do? And so I put it to the test of going, okay, if I believe what I believe, then there is a blessing in doing things the right way. So if I put that first, that should, this is like a scientific method test, that should translate to benefit across the business in its entirety, or this process doesn't work, therefore the whole thing's flawed. So I'm going to take the faith leap of putting this into practice. So if there are days I don't believe that should be worked from a business point of view, I give my entire business the day off and pay them. And this is in addition to annual leave, personal leave, anything else. These are just extra paid days off. You get your full normal pay as if you were at work, but just go home, have a day off, because this is my personal understanding. And I have seen the business improve because of that, not get worse. Now, the fundamental metrics say I'm probably taking an extra 8 days a year and giving to my team to say, go home and enjoy a day off and I'll pay you for it. I should be less have less productivity, not more. The business is running better. The whole system is running better. And so I take that as one of those proof texts of saying, being obedient to the things I think I should be and living by my convictions is actually proving to be positive inside the business, not negative. And so I'm going to continue to do it. But it also goes against a lot of other people's personal beliefs because they don't believe the way I do. And so they're like, why are you doing that? Why don't you X, Y, Z, fill in the blank? But I think if you have a personal conviction, that should be evident by the fact that you don't cross those boundaries. Mm-hmm. And that translates to another business principle, which is you need to have very solid boundaries and very solid, what you will accept and won't accept. For example, let's take this to the business extreme or the business example. If you say, part of my coaching program, you have to hold an 80% attendance in the program. Otherwise, first time you get a warning. If you don't improve attendance to above 80%, you're out. There's no refund. There's no anything. You violated the rules. You're out. Because I know if you don't attend, you can't get the value that you need and why you're here. So I am going to hold you to a standard. Now, when that first came up and somebody's not at 80%, do I kick them out or do I go, oh, look, I know you're a nice guy. Look, just don't tell him I'll let you stay in. No, you need to kick the person out. Because if you violate your standards the first time, you have no standards. And so you can say you have all these standards in your life until they're tested. That comes down to your character. Is your character going to stand up when you're tested? Are you going to hold to what you say is actually your boundaries and your beliefs? And you don't know what that is until you're tested.
Yeah, that's a great line. You don't have standards until they're tested. And yeah, but that's super important to come from that, principle-based approach, and then to stick to those, to the convictions or to the commitments. Absolutely, I think that's super value. So we're getting to the end here. I have just some rapid fire questions for you. So you just short answer. Top book recommendation for entrepreneurs.
Ooh, I'm actually going to go with Alex Hormozi's $100 million leads, $100 million offers, because lead generation and creating an offer is so critical to the fundamentals.
Absolutely. Love it. So if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Ooh, I like these questions. Okay. To be honest, it would be my grandfather, who has since passed. And only because before he was one of my biggest inspirations in putting me on this track. I learned all of my electrical interest from him. He was back in the 50s, or 60s, 70s, he was like TV, radio repairman, that kind of thing. And so I never got to show him what I could do in the business. I was still failing and struggling when he passed. I would love to be able to go back and show him what his influence had on me.
That's beautiful. If you could wave a wand and be free of any habit, what would you get rid of?
Self-doubt.
Awesome. That's good. Now, what's your favorite app on your phone? And it could be productivity, or it could just be, what's your favorite app?
Facebook.
Okay, I think I can piece together the why behind that. And then how do you unwind after a long day? Interestingly,
a lot of times I will watch reels and shorts just to give my brain, because of the way my brain wires, and I've come to understand this, it gives my brain something else to focus on in its conscious part, so that basically the rest of my brain can shut down. And so I find it, I don't take in any real information from it. I find it mind numbing, but it basically, my brain's running at about 150% all day, every day. And that allows me to kind of create that separation. And I can physically, in 15, 20 minutes, feel myself start to get really tired. It's like, cool, now I can go to sleep.
That's really interesting, because I've heard Dan Martell say the same thing. He'll sit down on a couch and watch TikTok. And so very interesting. All right. Well, Simon, it's been a pleasure having you on. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks again. Y'all take care. And yeah, thank you.